Okay, hello everyone. I am on the social media coordinator for NAMI Santa Clara County, and I am with our lovely guest, Athena. So a little bit about Athena. Athena has over 20 years of work and volunteer experience in the nonprofit, public, and private sectors. She received her Bachelor's of Arts in Business Management from North Carolina State University with a concentration in finance. Athena decided after battling, surviving, and thriving with a mental health condition in her own life, she wanted to give back. And so she became a volunteer with NAMI Colorado in 2017. She then became part of the staff, a NAMI Connection state trainer and facilitator, and in her own voice presenter and a certified recovery coach. She also created a holistic mental wellness program that assisted her in getting on track with her own recovery. She's now dedicated to encouraging individuals with their own road to mental health recovery. She is originally from Chicago, Illinois, and now lives in Denver, Colorado. Athena's passions are volunteering, creative writing, the arts, photography, animals, traveling, and spending time in nature, enjoying the Rocky Mountains. Oh, Athena, I love your hobbies. It makes me want to go out into nature right now.
I know. I feel the same way. Only we have a winter storm that has come in here in Colorado, so it's like 23 degrees and kind of keeps you inside.
Are you staying warm?
Yes, I am.
Okay, but Athena, would you like to say anything before we start?
No, I'm just very grateful that I've been asked by NAMI Santa Clara County to share my story, my mental health journey, and my experience with TD. So take it away. I'm all yours.
All right, Athena, so the first question, a little icebreaker question. So we got a little bit of this in your bio, but where are you currently based? And what is one of your favorite things about where you live?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm in Denver, Colorado. And apart from today, even though the sun is trying to show itself a little bit, it's a sunny state. The sun's always shining. And it really encourages me to do something I love to do a lot, and that's nature walking. Just to take in the mountain view. No matter where you are in Colorado, you can get a glimmer of the mountaintops and just the sunshine. So that's one of my favorite things to do.
I love it. Sounds beautiful. Okay, so Athena, kind of diving into the questions about Tardive Dyskinesia. Am I pronouncing that right?
I also have a hard time saying it myself. So TD works for me. Okay. If that works for you.
Okay, sure. Let's do it. Okay, so Athena, how would you explain to a child what is TD and how does it impact your day-to-day life?
I love that question because oftentimes when people are trying to understand their mental health condition, it becomes very clinical. There's a lot of resources out there that oftentimes intimidate us. And so if you're talking to a child, the first thing I would say to them is sometimes people have to take medication for certain conditions they have. And by doing so, it often can create side effects. And what side effects are when it comes to something called TD is that it can cause sometimes your hands to shake or your face to frown and make serious faces, but not intentionally, not on purpose. So you may look up, the person might look upset at you and they don't mean to. It can make the person feel really bad about themselves. It can affect your self-esteem. And people don't always understand you when you have TD. And it's often also something that hits your self-confidence. Makes you feel like you're not really capable of socializing because depending on how bad it is for you and how it affects you, you may not want to go out and be with friends or strangers. And you have to work really hard to build yourself up to feel good enough to get out there in spite of the side effects or the symptoms that you have that are showing up.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of, I guess, a follow-up question. What would you say to someone who is like newly experiencing TD and they have maybe some kinds of like social anxiety and they are self-conscious? What words of encouragement would you give to them?
Well, I would say that, first of all, our mental health is number one. For me, it was about the pros and cons. And there's times that I get frustrated with the TD that I have, because it can affect my sleep, for example. I slur sometimes because my tongue chooses to go to the left instead of the right. I mean, I always try to find that silver lining. And so I would encourage somebody to really make sure they're communicating with their doctor, because sometimes the medication that you're taking for your mental health can be too much of one good thing. And by tapering, and I'm not a doctor by no means, I would never suggest to someone to do this themselves. That's why it's imperative to be communicating with your doctor about your symptoms. So that's what I would encourage someone to do right away if they start seeing signs of TD.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Athena, so who has been the biggest influence on your life in terms of your mental health journey? And what lessons did they teach you? I see a smile coming on.
Because it's bittersweet, and I'll tell you why. One of my closest friends, I would call her a friend as well, was my doctor, Dr. Carmen Davila, who was here in Denver, Colorado. And she recently decided to retire and return to her native country, or return to where she came from, her origins, and kind of left some of us behind, unfortunately. But she was probably one of the most influential people in my life. She was a woman of faith. And if there's one thing that I have to give credit to is my faith. Because of her, I came to her very distraught, very troubled. My journey had halted. We were not getting the doctors before her. We're not getting my medicinal cocktail right, as we often call it, a cocktail. And so she gave me the courage to not quit and to be honest with her, and never give up on myself. And it was just she was an inspiring woman, and she continues to be someone that makes me smile, as you can see.
Oh, I love it. I'm glad you had her in your corner, kind of rooting for you and cheering you on. I imagine like it's kind of like when you feel alone and when you want to give up, you need that kind of extra push to keep fighting.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, thanks, Athena. And so the next question, which story from your life would help others understand what you believe?
Well, my journey it's like summits on a mountain range. You go up, and sometimes you have to come down, and you go up and you go down, and that's because of my diagnosis, which is bipolar disorder. One of my most recent stories would have to be a recent episode, unfortunately, that I had to experience. And this recent episode caused me to become catatonic. And it was...
What do you mean by catatonic?
Catatonic, well, the best way if I was describing it to a child, as you said earlier, what it is paralysis. It's a form of paralysis almost, where you're not moving, your eyes are open, and you're having what would be called I call them daymares instead of nightmares.
Wow.
And I literally was having terrorizing thoughts and visions that were making me cry because I was so scared that they were real. It felt that real to me. And I was, in some cases, in most of the time that I was catatonic, which lasted about a week, I was in the fetal position. And my friends and family, the reason I share this story is because of my faith again in the people that love and care about me. They came to my rescue. They came to visit me. I had one particular friend who was massaging my feet and talking to me and drying my tears. It was a very emotional, trying time for me and the people that care about me. And to understand me better, I would say that I wouldn't be speaking to you like I am today on about my journey and the courage it takes for anybody who is trying to get themselves out of the valley that they're in, whether it's depression, anxiety, paranoia, delusions, hallucinations, whatever diagnosis you have, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, it doesn't matter. The journey is your journey. And it's just so imperative in my personal experience to believe in something greater than myself to get me through it.
That was beautiful and really well said. Thank you. It reminded me, one thing that came up was over here at NAMI Santa Clara County, we just finished our NAMI walks in October, and you could just see everyone coming together. And one of our hashtags that we use in literally every NAMI walks post was hashtag together for mental health. And I think it's one of the missions that we try to practice here at NAMI, like that you are not alone and that there's help out there. And it can be scary because you feel like, you're alone. Maybe you feel broken and it's just like you don't want to reach out to people. And I'm so glad that you had your friends and family there. That's beautiful.
Thank you, An. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're not alone. We're not alone.
We're not. I guess this you kind of answered the next question I was going to ask, where it was like, what is one of the lowest points of your mental health journey, and how did you recover from that? I don't know if you want to attempt to answer that or move on to the next question or add more details.
Believe it or not, I've had more than one episode in my life. And so one in particular came to mind, even though the catatonic, the experience with catatonia was by far one of the most life-changing experiences for me, to do what I have to do to take care of myself no matter what. And I just wasn't doing the things that I should have been doing that caused me to get sick. So the one that does come to mind, if you don't mind, I'd like to share another story, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Great. I several years ago during the summer, I was experiencing mania, and I became very skewed in my judgment, my ability to decipher what was right from wrong, meaning what was dangerous and what was safe. And I ended up in a situation where I was involved with very scary people that put my life in danger, and I got hospitalized the day before my birthday. And they released me, unfortunately, sometimes due to whatever reason a hospital does it. They released me and I was still manic. And so I continued to go back to the lifestyle that I was living at the time, and became risky with my behavior. And then I had a wake-up call. And this is where I want to just share that oftentimes an episode can open you up to the dark night of the soul, if you know what I mean.
Dark Night of the Soul, yes, I do.
Yes, and I have had several experiences with the Dark Night of the Soul, and I pray that I won't be experiencing them again. But in this case, I had a wake-up call that halted me in my tracks. My dad got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And it literally took me from an elated state to a depressive state within days of the news. And it was a reality check. I stayed close to home. It halted the life that I was living because it made me realize that I was putting my life in danger. And it put me on track to be to heal and to recover from the episode that I had found myself in. And my safety net, another thing that I like to encourage people out there that have a mental health condition or just got diagnosed or are wondering what they're going to do next, start building a safety net underneath you. And one of those tools that I had found was the connection support groups that NAMI provides and offers to their peers. They're run by other peers, people who have walked in your shoes and continue to walk in your shoes, because the journey, the mental health journey is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I had my faith, I had family, I had friends. I found the doctor I mentioned, Dr. Davila, who started me on the right path with medication, the support groups I mentioned, and of course, medication was part of my regimen and continues to be. So it helped me through my hardest days.
Yeah. Athena, you mentioned faith a couple of times, and I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit about that, because one of my positions at NAMI was one of the FaithNet associate coordinators. And I don't know if you're familiar with FaithNet. Are you?
A little bit, just enough to get curious. So please.
Yeah. So FaithNet is it's a program where members of various faith communities, we come together and we promote mental health in faith congregations in various faith communities locally in our area. Just because we've noticed, NAMI has noticed that there is this intersection between spirituality, faith, and mental health, mental illness. And faith is it can be a very strong protective factor against mental illness. And so that's what we try to promote, making sure that these faith communities have the right information, that they can distinguish between, say, maybe a spiritual crisis or a mental health crisis. But I guess the question I wanted to ask was, how has, do you identify as, I guess, a religious or a person of faith?
Well, it's interesting that you, this is a conversation that could take us to a whole other place, because I love the subject matter. I believe I consider myself a spiritual person, but I lean towards the Christian faith. My belief in Jesus Christ is really where my foundation lies. And I encourage anyone not necessarily to follow a particular religious sect. What I encourage people to do, and this actually would lead into our next question on, if you want to ask it, the regimen that I use to manage TD.
Yes, I will ask that. Perfect. Okay. So the question is, Athena, how did you find a health regimen that worked for you to manage your TD and co-occurring diagnoses?
Well, that's where my faith did step in. And I believe that when, like the 12 steps talk about restoring your sanity by turning your life over to a power greater than yourself. And that's one of the steps in the 12-step program. And I try to practice those steps for various reasons to help with my own journey. And I wanted to mention that the previous question where I answered about my father having prostate cancer and going through that episode, I was symptom free for 6 years. And started having challenges again with my health because I went into deep therapy for my dual diagnosis, which is complex PTSD as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it triggered me to self-medicate. And that is what caused the catatonia, the episode I shared with you about the catatonic state,
Right.
which in turn caused me to look towards 12 steps and specifically turning my life over to a power greater than myself to restore my sanity. So I hope I answered your question before about where my faith lies. And FaithNet sounds fantastic, that it's out there and that you're participating in that on.
Right, thank you. And like you also mentioned the support system with your family, your friends, the medical professionals, Dr. Davila, I think you mentioned.
Dr. Davila, yes.
Davila. And it sounds like you found a medication regimen that worked out for you. I don't know if you had to taper or adjust any medications. How long was that? Like, what did that process look like for you? How long was that process?
Well, it's when I found Dr. Davila, or she found me, we started off very simply with a simple conversation. And that was, she said to me, Athena, I'm going to ask you to be honest with me no matter what happens when it comes to the medication, whatever side effects you're experiencing, whatever hindrance is preventing you from being compliant. I need to know these answers, and I need to know that you're struggling so that I can help you find the right medication, so that we would also work on not having TD symptoms exasperated, because oftentimes, depending on the dosage of the medication that I was on, it was causing me to have more symptoms of TD. Mm-hmm. And so she worked with me and we went back and forth and we were able to find the right regimen. And I wanted to also share with you and the people that are listening to this video today or whenever, that my regimen actually became a holistic approach. Mm-hmm. And I mean by holistic as in whole-istic, rather than holistic. And I encourage balance in people's lives when I talk to people about my story. And what I mean by that is I looked at myself both physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I think that's where FaithNet stepped in and provides that resource for multiple religious denominations and faiths. So physically, for example, I try my best to choose food that does not trigger moodiness and doesn't affect my brain function as much. Like sugars, for example, are very heavy in that area. Mentally, I avoid negative people and circumstances and things that can put my life in danger. And then spiritually, I lean on my faith for decisions and daily living. And I also believe that it's important to have the proper medication to alleviate your symptoms. Very important, so that your mental health is intact. And then in turn, since we talk about TD today, that also those symptoms are under control, which Dr. Davila helped me with. And having compassionate doctors. And another thing that I have found that helps with my symptoms is reducing stress and anxiety with practices like yoga, mindfulness, meditation, nature walks like I do, getting outdoors, doing things that can encourage a balance between your physical, mental, and emotional health.
Gosh, Athena, my Wi-Fi disconnected.
Technical difficulty.
Okay, go ahead.
Wonderful. So going back to the holistic approach that I use to keep my balance intact and keep me on track, especially after my recent episode, I had jumped on the bandwagon to do this. And mentally, for example, I avoid negative situations and people, influences, like things like on TV or, things like the news, things that can trigger me to get upset. And then spiritually, I lean on my faith, as I mentioned earlier, and it helps me to make my daily living more pliable, more easy, and I'm able to get the direction I need to make choices for myself, even though I take one day at a time. And that's imperative. So I also feel that you need to have the proper medication in place. As we mentioned earlier, Dr. Davila got me on the right cocktail, and it's worked for me. And also having compassionate doctors and understanding doctors is very, very, very important. But I also find that to reduce the symptoms that come with TD, for example, I find that if you reduce the anxiety in your life and the stressors in your life, it seems to let you have more control over what's going on with your body. That's why I try to practice yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, techniques that help you center.
I guess I have a question. Because I guess from my limited understanding, I see TD as kind of like a lot of physical symptoms. So does exercise help reduce the, I guess, intensity of TD, the severity of TD?
For me, it does, because I become more in tune to my body. I mean, certainly you're shaking and involuntary movements. Sometimes there's just very little you can do. That's why medication is so important. If you're going to be compliant with your medication for your mental health, because it really can knock the socks off your self-esteem. But I find that exercise and mindful regimen to be included in because for example, yoga, I feel physically, mentally, and spiritually balances you, even daily stretches that bring you to your center. I'm not, an expert by no means, and I practice the best I can. But I would say that it does help. It does help.
I appreciate that. Let's see. Let me get my questions. Okay. So Athena, it sounds like, I guess just to kind of summarize a little bit about what we talked about, TD it is a side effect of the medications you take, for your other diagnoses. And you've worked with, you have a great support system, like with your family, your friends, and the Dr. Davila. I keep messing up the name.
It's okay, Dr. Davila, who's not with me anymore. So I'm starting anew with someone. But the good news is that she left behind a regimen that the new person is applying. So we're in good shape.
I hope the new doctor is as compassionate, as caring, as involved as Dr. Davila was. But it sounds like you've had this great support system. You're also aware of your own body and what it means to make sure that the symptoms stay kind of under control. And also, I love your word holistic with a W, and how you're taking care of yourself in all aspects. That seems to have put you in a really good spot, like where you are now. And so, Athena, I guess the last question I want to ask you is, what message do you want to give to people watching this? Maybe someone who's struggling, living with TD, or maybe another mental illness, or maybe that knows someone that is. Hopefully that question made sense. Any last words for anyone watching this with a mental illness or know someone who is struggling with a mental illness?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is don't ever quit on yourself. No matter how hard it becomes. There's something that happens that a lot of people who have mental illness, it happens to, and it's called fallout. And what that is, it often can look like the loss of a job, the relationships getting destroyed because of your episode, or for whatever reason, whatever happens due to your condition. So don't ever quit on yourself, no matter what. And also to give yourself permission to not be okay, that it's okay to not be okay. And that's something out there that people are saying more and more, that it's okay to not be okay. And that there is hope that can come from as the river, or excuse me, as the, what is it, Phoenix rising, that you can find, like the dark night is the soul of the soul, as we mentioned earlier, that there's hope within dismay and chaos, that you can't come out from the other side. And my walk right now, no doubt, has been a struggle, but at the same time, I'm prevailing. And I want to share that whether it's depression, anxiety, diagnosis like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder, whatever it might be that you're struggling with, that you can make it. And that if you can, find a power greater than yourself that can restore your sanity, and never give up again. You are significant. You're important. You can prevail. And when your TD symptoms do raise their ugly head, don't let them stop you from being you, because your self-worth is not relying on what others think of you. What it relies on is what you think of yourself. So thank you today.
That was beautiful. I think that's the perfect way to excuse me, to end things. So thank you, Athena. Thank you for your time, your wisdom, your experience, your life, your story. It was an honor to sit here and just be with you.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you.
Okay, let me stop the recording.